Discover 3 spine-chilling home intrusions, terrifying true tales of sinister secrets revealed. The sun had barely dipped behind the horizon when the unsettling chill whispered through the branches of the old oak trees that lined Sarah Street. A creature was lurking, or so it felt. She thought it was just her imagination until her phone buzzed, and the messages began flooding in. "I see what you do at night." They sent shivers down her spine. Who was watching? Excited laughter echoed from down the block where children played in the fading light. But for Sarah, that laughter twisted into something sinister as she recalled a shadow flickering outside her window 2 nights before. She brushed it off, blaming fatigue from the nursing home shift. Yet, every evening, solitude crept back in, filling her small living room with unease. The messages grew more cryptic, painting her daily life with unnerving accuracy. "Dinner with Zoe at 6, they said one night." Sarah's heart raced. Had someone been outside, counting the minutes? Every flicker of her porch light sent a jolt of fear through her. Still, she told herself it was just a prank. Maybe the neighborhood kids were just being silly. Then one evening, as she prepared spaghetti for dinner, Sarah sensed a pair of eyes boring through her kitchen window. She whipped around, heart pounding, but there was only her reflection staring back at her. That night, Zoe was late, and her mother's worry turned into frantic panic. The clock's ticking echoed like a drumbeat in her mind. Finally, Zoe burst through the door, face pale, shaking. "I saw him, Mom. A man in the yard." Sarah's stomach sank. Avoiding the local police, she frantically replayed Zoe's words in her mind. "It couldn't be this neighborhood. It's safe here." But the whispers in the trees betrayed her belief. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but safety proved elusive. Observing neighbors James and Lily, Sarah noticed them exchanging furtive glances as she passed, their smiles now unsettling rather than welcoming. Digging deeper into their past, she unveiled a twisted history of darker times intertwined with her own seemingly perfect life. Each uncovered layer left her breathless, realizing that the threat bore a familiar face. Night after night, the messages ceased to be just wisps of dread. They morphed into sinister prophecies of her routine. "They'll wait for you at the door," it said one night, so chillingly precise, it left her frozen. But now exposed to the truth, paranoia prickled her skin. They were no longer mere whispers of fear but echoes of something far more dangerous. As each heartbeat hurried into the chilling screams of the overarching silence, Sarah stood at her front door, staring into the deepening shadows with a gut-wrenching realization. Sometimes the biggest dangers don't come from outsiders but from well-masked faces hiding just next door. As the final shroud of normalcy fell away, she caught sight of a note fluttering down from her fingers onto the porch. "I see you." Heart racing, she wondered, had she just become a player in a twisted game, one where darkness waited just outside her cozy, suburban world? The wind howled through the branches, carrying with it the weight of 1,000 unspoken fears. Sarah inhaled, the air thick with anxiety, as her gaze darted back into the shadows enveloping her porch. She could almost feel the presence lingering just beyond her sight, breathing quietly, watching her every move. "Get a grip, Sarah," she muttered, forcing herself to step inside and lock the door. The comforting click of the deadbolt felt inadequate against the pervasive sense of vulnerability. Zoe was already in her room, and Sarah didn't want to escalate her daughter's panic. Yet, the whispering chill wrapped around her like a shroud, saturating her thoughts with paranoia. She dropped her phone on the kitchen counter. The screen lit up again with a new message: "How will you keep her safe?" Sarah's heart lodged itself in her throat. The words taunted her, twisting her innards like a vice. She began pacing, fingers trembling against the countertop, trying to formulate a plan, any plan. Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting shadows that danced along the walls, playing tricks on her already fraying mind. Had it happened because she was thinking about it? Or was someone tampering with the electrical box outside? Each thought filled her with dread, every sound from the street tightened the knot in her stomach. "What do you want?" She shouted into the growing darkness, half hoping for an answer, half terrified of one. Moments passed in silence, taut as a drawn bowstring. Then, a soft scraping noise came from the back door. Sarah froze, her breath catching in her chest. It sounded like something or someone was pulling at the latch. Goosebumps erupted across her skin as she tore her gaze towards the back of the house. The kitchen window, already obstructed by curtains, could not keep her safe from the looming threat outside. She fumbled for her phone, desperately dialing 911. Her hands shook as the operator answered, but before she could speak, the scraping grew louder, a deliberate dragging sound that sliced through the silence. "Mom." Zoe's voice, small and frightened, broke through the noise. Sarah spun around, pulling her daughter into a tight embrace. "Stay close, sweetheart. It's okay." "No, it's not," Zoe whispered, clutching at Sarah's shirt. "There's someone in the backyard." The walls felt like they were closing in as Sarah's heart thundered in her ears. She strained to listen, but her senses overpowered by fear prevented her from hearing anything beyond her daughter's shallow breaths. "Mom, I don't want to be alone," Zoe whimpered. "Neither do I," Sarah admitted softly. Her gaze flicked to the back door, mind racing. What could she do? Run for help? Call for neighbors? But the messages echoed back, "They'll wait for you at the door." A sudden crash broke the stillness, shattering the safety of their haven. "Get down!" Sarah screamed, pulling Zoe to the floor as the sound of splintering wood filled the air. The back door had burst open, an inky silhouette silhouetted against the dim light from the hallway. That a shuffling figure emerged, late evening shadows draping over the man's face. Sarah's stomach clenched as realization clawed at her. The familiar outline James, their neighbor, staggered into view, his eyes wild and unrecognizable. "What do you want?" Sarah's voice trembled, but she stood her ground. But the man's gaze shifted abruptly, his words unintelligible, as if he were caught between worlds. Sarah's heart raced. "Mom!" Zoe cried again, afraid. "What is happening?" Sarah demanded, stepping protectively in front of her daughter. Suddenly, the air crackled with an unspeakable tension. James let out a gravelly laugh, a sound that squirmed under Sarah's skin. "You shouldn't have looked," he rasped. Beneath the laughter lurked a deeper, darker truth. What had she unwittingly uncovered? What secrets could James expose? As they stared into the uncertainty ahead, Sarah realized her fight was just beginning. The darkness had begun to seep inside, and what came next would shatter all security she once knew. But even as dread filled her, a dawning thought emerged. Who could she truly trust when the mask of familiarity could hide the darkest of intentions? A freeze settled over her soul, shattered only by the menacing whisper that slithered through the shadows. "I see you." And with that, Sarah braced herself for an encounter that would send chills through her very existence, knowing only one truth remained: the real horror lived next door. "Why did you look?" James sputtered, his voice a broken record of dread. His eyes were wide, but not with recognition, rather, with something primal, something hungry. Sarah's mind spiraled as the shadows crept closer, entangling her vision, twisting it into something dark and malevolent. "Zoe, go hide," she whispered urgently, her heart racing. But the little girl's grip tightened, her small knuckles paling as she clung to Sarah's shirt. "Mom! I don't want to leave you." Zoe's voice quivered, but the raw terror on Sarah's face was enough to make her comply. "Please, now," Sarah urged, pushing Zoe toward the stairwell, her own eyes never leaving James. The girl scampered away, but Sarah's pulse surged in time with the pounding of her heart, each beat a cacophony of fear. "James, you need to get out," she said, her voice steady, even as her hands trembled. "You're not yourself." But the man's laughter rolled out again, wild and unhinged. "Not myself? Oh, but don't you see? I am finally free." His gaze darted around the room, fixating on small things, a family photo on the mantel, Zoe's colorful drawing stuck to the fridge. The room, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage. "What did you find?" Sarah pressed, edging further back toward the kitchen, desperate for distance. "Why are you acting like this?" James took a step forward, then another, his body moving with a jerkiness that made it clear he was no longer in control. "You shouldn't have seen, Sarah," he rasped, fingers twitching at his sides. "They don't want to be seen who?" She dared to ask, a lurch of fear knotting her stomach. The shadows seemed to writhe behind him, dark tendrils stretching and yawning. He pressed his lips together, a thin line of blood visible as he bit down. "The ones who watch. They're coming for you now," he wheezed, his face contorting into a mixture of mania and terror. The lights flickered again, the room plunging into darkness, momentarily blinding Sarah. She edged toward the counter, her fingers fumbling for anything, a knife, a canister, anything she could use. When the light returned, glaring and bright, James was closer, practically looming. "You can't hide from the truth, Sarah." His voice echoed against the walls, the timber vibrating like a shockwave. "Stay away," she shouted, mustering every ounce of courage. In that moment, as if on cue, the kitchen door slammed. The sound sent a bolt of fear through her, and she turned, only to see Zoe standing there, eyes wide, face pale. "Mom! The window, there's something outside!" Zoe screamed, as James lunged forward, wild-eyed. "Look away, Zoe!" Sarah cried, pulling her daughter close to her again, shielding her from the sight of the man she once thought she knew. "We need to go." But before they could react, another crash resounded, this time the front door splintering under the force of another unwelcome visitor. Chaos erupted, the door was kicked in, and a gust of frigid wind howled through the corridor. A figure stood there, backlit, tall and imposing. It was not just James anymore, it was something worse. The noise still echoed in Sarah's ears, the dread coiling tightly as reality warped around her. "Mom!" Zoe wrenched free from Sarah's grasp, stumbling backward, her voice cracked with fear. "What are we going to do?" Sarah's entire world was spinning. As she stood there, mirroring the horror in her daughter's eyes, a chilling realization iced through her veins. This darkness was deeper than she imagined. "Whatever happens, don't look away. Don't look," she urged, flinging her trembling hands toward James, who had begun to snarl, revealing jagged teeth through chapped lips. And just as the air thickened with terror, the figure in the doorway stepped forward. Time suspended, and in an instant, shadows lunged. What had Sarah awakened in looking too deeply into the abyss? The ground trembled underfoot as chaos unwrapped before them, but one thing when lingered in the air like a sickening scent: there was no escaping the monsters that now hunted them all. What awaited them beyond that threshold could unravel everything, and Sarah could feel it creeping closer, relentless. If only she could shake that feeling, the whispering in her mind, a cruel reminder, they're here. As the sinister force closed in, the looming question hung between them like a knife's edge: would they survive to face the truth, or was the night just beginning? Zoe's scream pierced through the air like glass shattering, and as if on cue, a wave of icy dread washed over Sarah. She felt her throat tighten, her heart pounding like a drum in the dead silence that followed the crash. The figure in the doorway moved slowly, prodding the dark, as if relishing every moment of their fear. "Run, Zoe!" Sarah shouted, but her voice wobbled, uncertainty clinging to her words like grime. Zoe, frozen in place, barely registered the command. Her eyes darted between Sarah and James, who now stood locked in an unsettling grin, a raw hunger etched in his features. "Mom, no." Not the words caught in her throat, too heavy to lift. Then it happened. The shadows slithered from the corners of the kitchen, hungry and alive. They coiled around the intruder like serpents, darkening the doorway until it became a hellish void. The frigid air seeped into Sarah's bones, and she staggered backward, gripped by a paralysis of fear. "Don't look," Sarah repeated, panic snapping her out of the paralysis just enough to grasp Zoe's arm. She tugged at her daughter, but the child was entranced, gazing wide-eyed at the figure who seemed to twist and stretch like a distorted reflection in a cracked mirror. With desperation igniting her veins, Sarah hurled herself toward the back door, but the horrifying visage of James, transformed and clawing at reality, towered in front of her. "They'll take you too," he shrieked, and the words hung in the air like a malevolent curse. The air was thick, charged. It felt alive, whispering hidden terrors just beyond comprehension. The shadows flickered, tangling around them, reaching out like tendrils of lost will, clawing for their sanity. Sarah tried to block out the noise, the suffocating silence threatening to swallow them whole. "Mom!" Zoe shrieked, her voice cracking, dragging Sarah back into that reality. Sarah turned, and for a split second, met her daughter's gaze, filled with raw fear and unspoken trust. "Zoe, listen," Sarah urged, her words spilling forth like a desperate prayer. "You have to believe me. We can't let them in. We can't." She felt a surge of warmth as Zoe squeezed her hand tightly. "I want to let go." But the shadows pressed in tighter, whispering cruelly, and Sarah could almost hear them taunting her from the depths of her own mind. "You let him look, you let him see." Suddenly, the dark figure strutted into the room, a smile split too wide across its gaunt face. The air pulsated with malevolence, wrapping around them like chains. The realities of their world crumbled, everything turned fluid and sickening, each breath they took becoming more labored. "Why not join us?" it asked, voice booming with a twisted delight. "You could be free, like him." The figure gestured to James, who had fallen silent, now a vessel of chaos. "No. No." Sarah screamed, adrenaline surging. She shoved her daughter toward the kitchen drawer, shouting, "Get something, anything." But before Zoe could move, the figure lunged forward, a blur of shadow and malice intent on consuming them both. In that instant, Sarah felt the weight of a lifetime pressed against her, images of childhood laughter, birthday parties, and the radiant light of Zoe's smile flickered through her mind. She could not let this be it. Not now. "Zoe! Get out!" she screamed, heart racing. With no time to think, she grabbed the frying pan from the counter and swung it, connecting with the darkness. The impact sent shockwaves through the figure, but instead of retreating, it recoiled with a shrill shriek that echoed in a harmony of madness. The shadows around it recoiled but then surged back, angrier, hungrier. Zoe stood frozen again, horror gluing her feet to the floor, caught in a battle between instinct and obedience. "Zoe!" Sarah cried, desperation igniting her voice. "You have to run." But darkness wasn't finished. It lunged forward again, and in its wake, a chilling truth clawed closer. They had not just trespassed into their home, but into something far beyond and more unrelenting. As the shadows enveloped them, Sarah realized the truth: this was just the beginning, and what awaited them in that choking darkness could very well unravel everything they fought for. What had awakened in their reality could not simply be brushed aside. Was escape even an option, or had they already sealed their fates? And as dread filled the room, a loud crack boomed from the other side of the house. Then began a slow, soft laughter that turned into howls, echoing through the halls like a sinister melody. Was there even a way back? Sarah's breath came in frantic gasps as she swung the frying pan again. The metal met shadow, a dull thud that vibrated through her arms, but the darkness remained unyielding, a grotesque shape mocking her with twisted laughter. It was a sound that crawled under her skin and festered, nauseating her as she fought to protect Zoe. "Zoe, run. Please." Sarah pleaded, desperation peeking through her raw voice. But Zoe stood rooted, eyes wide, reflecting both terror and an overwhelming sense of confusion. In that moment, darkness surged. The figure lunged again, fingers elongated into jagged claws, gripping the air like a predator. Sarah barely managed to dodge, feeling the brushes of icy fingers graze the back of her neck, sending chills spiraling down her spine. Time lost its meaning. The world around them warped, stretching and bending, reality dissolving into a cacophony of panic and despair. Sarah spotted the windows, barred by darkness like an impenetrable fortress. Outside, the wind howled, shrieking warnings that mixed indistinguishably with the low, terrifying growls echoing within their home. "Mom!" Zoe's cry pierced through the chaos, a weak plea that pulled at Sarah's heart. She turned, affirming Zoe's wide-eyed stare locked toward the dark figure inches away. It emanated an unfathomable dread, like a storm churning within a shadowy vortex. "Get back!" Sarah shouted, swinging the frying pan. The impact landed again, but the beast only shrieked, seeming to absorb the pain as if it thrived on fear, every swing of metal emboldening it further. With each second, the shadows thickened. They wrapped around Sarah's ankles, dragging her into a suffocating grip. She pulled away instinctively, adrenaline fueling her fight. "I want to let it take you," she screamed, latching onto Zoe's arm, yanking her toward the kitchen doorway. "Mom, what if?" Zoe whimpered, tears welling, fear spilling out in shaky breaths. "No what ifs. Just trust me," Sarah cried, dragging her daughter behind a kitchen island, the once familiar space now transformed into a surreal battleground. The shadows writhed, like snakes angered, prepared to strike against their barricade. Silence fell for a heartbeat. The monstrous figure paused, head tilting as if listening, eyes narrowing malevolently. Then, with an otherworldly screech, it lunged again, crashing against the island, sending cans and pots clattering to the floor, a stampede of chaos that echoed through the suffocating air. "Get ready!" Sarah shouted, her heart echoing in her ears as she fumbled through the drawers, searching frantically for anything that might stave off devastation. A knife? A lighter? Without warning, the shadows swirled, focusing on Zoe, who barely managed to catch a glimpse of movement. A pale hand shot out of the darkness, meant to ensnare her. "Zoe!" The scream erupted naturally, primal and raw. With a swift motion, Sarah intercepted, throwing herself in front of her daughter. The darkness engulfed her, clawing at her desperation, but for the briefest moment, she felt the warmth of Zoe's hand slip from her grasp, drifting away, offering a flicker of light amid suffocating fear. Sarah screamed, not in helplessness, but in defiance. A sudden realization crashed into her. The laughter, those haunting howls from the other side of the house, they were not merely background noise, they were an invitation. "You need to let me in. Believe." The figure bellowed again, a roar shattering the air, but underneath lay a chilling truth: they were being hunted. As the shadows twisted, a path began to form, a shimmering light amidst the engulfing dark, leading somewhere deeper, somewhere terrifying. "Mom!" Zoe's voice echoed with uncertainty, but Sarah knew they had no other choice. "Zoe, go." She pushed her daughter toward the light, a faint beam of hope. But as Zoe darted forward, the darkness erupted, tendrils wrapping around her ankle, pulling her down. "No." In that moment, Sarah felt the gravity of despair. The shadows clawed tougher, and the laughter roared in ecstasy, promising chaos. Was the light a pathway to safety, or just another trap disguised as hope? The choice laid heavy in the air between them, ticking down like a time bomb. Would she choose to remain or plunge into the uncertain, braving whatever horror lay ahead in the heart of darkness? Because the abyss was hungry and it had its sights set on them. Zoe struggled against the icy grip of the darkness, her body pinned down as her mother's voice rang like an alarm. "Let her go. She's not yours." Sarah's heart hammered as anxiety twisted in her gut. She hadn't just lost her grip on Zoe's hand, she was losing grasp of time. "Mom!" Zoe cried, her voice trembling, a faint echo beneath the growling shadows. The tendrils tightened, squeezing like a vice, swallowing her in darkness. Then, just as quickly as the fear clawed at Sarah's heart, it morphed into fierce determination. She dove forward, heart racing faster than her thoughts, and seized Zoe's other ankle. "I want to let you have her," Sarah shouted, pulling with all her strength. A sudden burst of light flickered from the path they had spotted, radiant and unwavering, bathed in hope. Just short of clarity, Sarah could see Zoe's face a swirl of panic and desperate trust. She let out a cry, the voice of a lioness, infusing their surroundings with fierce resolve. As she yanked with unyielding force, the darkness shrieked. It sounded like a monstrous chorus, a cacophony that drowned out Sarah's heartbeat. Still, she pulled, knowing that disembodied shapes thrived on fear, and she was done giving in. Suddenly, the shadows writhed, retreating slightly, hissing in frustration but not releasing their grip. "You'll be mine in the end," the figure hissed, the voice growling with malice. The grotesque body seemed to suck in the darkness, making itself larger, more menacing. "Stay with me, Zoe," Sarah yelled, digging deep in her core. "We'll make it." She could feel the warmth of her daughter's calf sending strength into her. With one last scream, she dug in, bracing herself for the inevitable clash. The shadows recoiled, only to surge forward again with lethal speed, fangs snapping. They reached for Zoe with single-minded intent, thrumming with unholy energy. Then, in a blink, time warped again, as if the universe held its breath. Sarah caught a glimmer of something in the shadows, an edge, a flickering face, a flash of vulnerability somewhere within that monstrosity. "Grab my hand, Zoe," Sarah cried, holding out her arm, the frying pan abandoned at her feet. As Zoe moved her hand toward her mother, a defiant roar erupted from Sarah's chest. She felt the friction of pain ricochet through her body as the tentacles gripped tighter. But she didn't care. Just as their fingertips brushed, there was a momentary spark, as if the light itself was alive. Zoe grasped her mother's hand, and they both pulled with every ounce of strength. Sarah could feel the warmth growing, brighter, and yet the darkness fought with ferocity. "No!" demanded the figure, the weight of its fury slashing through the air. "You are mine." The shadows howled, tore at their bond, and were met with the luminous force of their desperate connection. For a moment, each pulse of light pushed back the surrounding darkness like a tidal wave, and the monstrous figure wailed as it clawed against their escape, but could they break free? With a sudden jolt, the shadows released their hold on Zoe, sending her tumbling toward Sarah. In a heartbeat, she felt tension shift. They both hurtled toward the blinding light. But as they approached, the weight of darkness surged again, angry and vengeful. The figure loomed larger, filling the space, a churning mass of malice and intent, ready to reclaim what it lost. "Don't stop. We're almost there." They were so close. But then the ground beneath them began shifting, the floorboard splintering and cracking a trap. The light flickered as if warning them of something darker beneath. In a panic, Sarah turned to Zoe, her eyes wild, heart racing. "What do we do?" And just then, she remembered they had to face the truth of what they were up against. "Believe, Zoe. Believe in the light. You have to fight." A sinister laugh erupted from the depths of the shadows, vibrating the walls, mocking their fear. The very air became charged with malevolent energy, a palpable dread. Would their belief be enough to pierce the heart of that terrifying darkness? As the shadows surged toward them again, ready to envelop them once more, the unyielding truth loomed. Sometimes fighting for light felt just as frightening as facing the dark. Could they withstand the final assault? Would belief be their shield, or would it crumble in the face of hatred? Because fingers of despair were tightening around their throats, and they were still so far from safety. As terror hung in the air, one question remained: would hope extinguish the monstrous shadows, or would it be swallowed whole? The shadows erupted with savage ferocity, bars of darkness clawing at the light, eager to snuff out any flicker of hope. Sarah's heart thumped with unbridled terror. "We can't give up, Zoe," She shouted, her voice urgent and strained. She couldn't let those ghastly tendrils wrap around them, couldn't allow the entity to assert its control over her daughter. Zoe clutched her mother's hand as the darkness roared. A million whispers filled the air, taunting, each syllable heavy with despair. Still, they pushed forward. The blinding light beckoned them like a lighthouse in a stormy sea. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, splintering beneath them. The room felt alive, as if the very essence was angry at their defiance. The sensation of falling wrapped around them, yet they kept clawing toward the light, fingers straining, skin stretching. "Mom!" Zoe wailed, terror glazing her young eyes. "What if we don't make it?" The question sliced through Sarah's resolve. But she couldn't falter, she wouldn't let fear control their fate. "We will. Just keep holding on," she cried, squeezing Zoe's hand tighter. But the shadows thickened, claws slashing at their legs, and tailing tendrils wrapped around both women, hissed, whispering secrets of fear, secrets that made shadows thrive. They tugged back mercilessly, trying to drag them away from the light. "Don't listen. They lie," Sarah shouted, her voice almost breaking. She felt darkness clawing at her essence, thoughts of loss, of failure, loomed like a noose tightening around her heart. Suddenly, Zoe gasped. "Mom! Look! The light!" The glow shifted, breaking against the darkness like a wave crashing into the shore. It wasn't merely light, it was warmth, it was love, an affirmation of everything they fought for. "Zoe! Together!" Sarah barked. They surged forward as one. Sarah felt every muscle burn, every heartbeat resonate with determination. The shadows snarled and writhed, and for a brief moment, the ties binding them shattered. Yet, an angry roar erupted from the darkness, shaking the very foundation. A figure materialized, monstrous and feral. It towered over them, grotesque features twisting into a mask of rage. "You think you can escape? You belong to me." A chilling wave of dread spilled over Sarah, chilling her to the bone, but she didn't give in. "We are not yours," she screamed back, her voice ringing with defiance. Zoe's hand felt warm in hers, and with newfound strength, they lunged toward the light together. As if by magic, the blinding radiance surged, illuminating the dark corners of their nightmare. But suddenly, the laughter returned, deep and mocking, echoing in their ears. The ground quaked violently as the entity gathered itself, instilling dread that clawed at their insides. "Do you think I'll let you go that easily?" It hissed, shadows spilling toward them once again, insatiable in its hunger. This time, the darkness didn't just threaten, they charged in with the weight of a stampede. Sarah stumbled, but tripped not just by fear, but the memory of moments shared with Zoe, the laughter, the hugs, the safe spaces between shadows and light. With an insane burst of bravery, as the darkness enveloped her lower body, Sarah lifted herself taller, rooted to protect her daughter. "Stand with me, Zoe." But a terrifying thought invaded her mind. Was it too late? Could they truly withstand the crushing weight of the dark? In that moment, vulnerability surged alongside a glimmer of hope. Their bond shone like a beacon, reminding her of the power of love and its tether against despair. But the shadows were pressing closer, seeping through cracks in their resolve. Would that connection be enough to fight against such a monstrous force? With the shadows surging violently, Sarah felt her grip begin to falter. The light flickered. And then, she realized, even in the deepest darkness, they needed to believe truly and wholly. What if the heart of darkness held a truth that could save them or doom them? The air screamed with an urgency that cut through the swirling darkness. Sarah's mind raced, her heart pounding in sync with the monstrous growl that echoed all around them. The shadows didn't just threaten, they filled every fiber of the room, clawing to consume any glimmer of light they could find. "Hold my hand tighter, Zoe," Sarah shouted, desperation spilling from her voice as she tightened her grip around her daughter's small fingers. Zoe's face was pale, terror pooling in her wide eyes. "What if it gets us, Mom?" "No. It's not going to get us, Sarah replied, every word steeped in a bravado she barely felt. They pushed forward, feet slipping on the cold, unyielding ground, dark fingers coiling around their ankles in a vice-like grip. The laughter, deep and maniacal, rumbled in rhythms that reverberated through their bones. It was mocking, as if the shadows found joy in their pain. "We're almost there," Sarah urged, feeling sweat bead on her forehead. The light seemed so inviting now, shimmering like a distant dream just beyond reach. She could feel the warmth it radiated through the chilling air, promising salvation. "Don't let go," Zoe cried. But as they neared the threshold, the ground trembled again, and shadows twisted upward, snaking their way around Sarah's waist. "You're not escaping," the entity hissed, its voice a guttural growl that rattled in the marrow of her bones. In that moment, Sarah felt the truth that blazed inside her. Zoe's hand clasped in hers was a tether. It was hope. With everything she had, Sarah pulled them both forward, fighting against the tide of darkness that surged with a hunger that felt all-consuming. "You don't belong to it, Zoe. You hear me? You belong to the light." But the shadows writhed angrily, clawed lives fueled by their fear. They wrapped around Sarah's legs, whispering sordid tales of despair, doubt, and the horrors they could suffer. "You will be lost. You will be consumed." "No." Sarah voiced each argument. "We will not be broken." And yet, with each stride, the weight of the entity's presence pressed harder. An iron grip around her chest, an extra weight that sapped her courage minute by minute. Bodies twisting beneath the pressure, she felt the dark fingers inching closer, grazing her skin but not breaking through. "Mom!" Zoe screamed, her shrill voice shattering the oppressive atmosphere. "It's getting too tight. I can't breathe. Just breathe with me. We can do this. Think of the park, the flowers, remember how we both laughed when you fell into the fountain last summer." In her mind's eye, Sarah conjured the image, the joy, the purity, the laughter of that sunny day. It flickered like the light approaching, and she clung to it, drawing strength from their shared moments. But the shadows roared in response, a cacophony of betrayal and pain. "No. You will not escape. This is your end." Courage ignited, Sarah surged forward once more. With an almighty scream, she felt the pain pierce through as the shadows clawed at her skin, their hateful touches igniting fire under her flesh. But behind the sting, a burning illumination surged beneath the light, the truth of their bond igniting fiercely. "Zoe, now!" Sarah commanded, and they charged forward, hand in hand, with every ounce of strength remaining. The dark twisted viciously, a steel wall of shadows looming. Would the light protect them, or would it shatter upon impact, leaving them to drown in horror? As they pushed forward, the shadows buckled like a wave crashing against the shore, but the roar of the entity was not just angry, it was desperate. "Believe in the darkness. Embrace it." And then, just as doubt crept in once more, Sarah glimpsed something, a reflection within the shadows. An object, shimmering, longing for connection. What truth hid behind that glitter? And would it be the key to their survival, or another trap waiting to ensnare them? Zoe's cry rang out, slicing through the cacophony as they barreled toward the flickering light. Hope dripped from each syllable, yet darkness writhed fiercely, fighting back. A rumble echoed as they surged forward. The shadows hissed like serpents, flicking their barbed tongues closer to the warmth of Sarah and Zoe, desperate to drag them back into the abyss. "Don't look back. Just keep running," Sarah shouted, her voice raw, as if every word had to battle the gloom surrounding them. She could feel the heat of the light several feet away, a beacon, but it seemed to dance just out of reach, as if testing their determination. The entity howled, its voice thunderous. "You cannot escape. You are mine." Chilled to her core, Sarah blocked it out. Instead, she recalled the colorful days they spent at the park, the laughter shared while feeding ducks. The memories fueled her forward, grounding her spirit against the chaos. "Mom! I can't see it anymore." Zoe half cried, voice wavering. Is it still there? It has to be. Just look at my eyes. Sarah urged. Her heart raced. If they diverted their gaze, even for a moment, the shadows would prey on their fear. Focus on me, Zoe, please. And then, out of the corner of her vision, something sparkled, a sliver of shimmering hope lodged within the roiling black mass. Sarah's heart stuttered. Was it the reflection she had spotted before, or an illusion born from terror? Mom, what's that? Zoe's voice was barely above a whisper, raw fear enunciating each syllable. I don't know, but we need to reach it. They pushed onward, but the shadows launched a counteroffensive, coiling tighter around them. A strand of darkness crept over Zoe's mouth, stifling her screams. Don't. Leave her alone. Sarah screamed, rage rushing through her veins as she fought against the crushing weight that in the blink of an eye, Sarah felt something break inside her. Was it despair or the bond she shared with Zoe? With furious energy, she yanked her daughter close, defiance fueling her will. They pushed, clawing through shadows that turned ever more sinister, wrapping themselves around Sarah like barbed wire, slicing and gnawing at her flesh. Keep going. Sarah gasped, praying they wouldn't falter. Suddenly, a surge came as they neared that shimmering reflection. Perhaps it was the light they needed. They reached it, grasping desperately for the object lurking within the chaos, a silver locket stacked with tiny dark stones, pulsating gently as if alive. Mom! What is it? Zoe gasped, eyes glistening with both fear and bewilderment. I don't know, but it feels important. The shadows recoiled at its approach, screeching angrily. No. No. Not the truth. You can't take it. Their fingers brushed against the locket, a hot jolt of energy radiating through them. Sarah hesitated, dread swirling in her stomach. What lay within it? Was it salvation or a gateway to deeper suffering? In that brief, intense moment of contact, time seemed to slow. The laughter and howls evaporated, replaced by an eerie silence that enveloped them. Even the darkness deferred to the promise of the locket, pulling away just enough. Mama Zoe's voice quivered again. What do we do? Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Did she dare unravel its secrets? Or was the truth something better left unopened? As the locket flashed in their hands, a surge of shadows rushed forward, a forceful tide of darkness, inching closer, looming threateningly. Would Sarah unleash what the shadows feared, or would she seal their fate, lost forever in the void? The tension electrified the air, a palpable fear gripping Sarah's heart as she searched for an answer, but time was running out as darkness surged forward, shadows clamored to reclaim what they had lost. Would this moment be a leap into the light or a step deeper into despair? The chaos in the kitchen swelled around Sarah as she clutched the locket, feeling a warmth emanate from it like a beacon of hope. The shadows writhed and twisted, their voices an unending chorus of threats and despair, but she recalled the memories that had sustained her, days spent laughing with Zoe, afternoons at the park, the times when their bond had been unbreakable. They surged forward together, fingers cramped around the silver locket, now pulsing with energy. Zoe, on 3, she said, heart racing. We're going to open it together. 1, 2, 3. With a breath of determination, she flipped the locket open. A surge of brilliant light exploded from within, washing over the kitchen in a blinding flash. The anguished screams of the shadows erupted, a cacophony of anguish that echoed off the walls. The light twisted and turned like a living entity, pushing back against the darkness with unrelenting force. Shades lurched and reeled, shrieking as they scattered. Hold on to the light. Sarah urged, pulling Zoe close as the illumination enveloped them both. The light tasted like freedom and something long forgotten. As it wrapped around them like a protective shroud, Sarah felt the icy grip of the shadows begin to dissolve. They blurred and melted away, revealing a dimension that was once shrouded in darkness. With each passing second, Sarah felt lighter, the dread that had consumed her for so long faltering under the imminent force of the truth they had awakened. "What is happening?" Zoe gasped, a mix of awe and fear coloring her voice as she watched shadows be obliterated before their very eyes. "I think we're winning, Zoe." Sarah couldn't contain her excitement. The fear that had gripped her heart, that had paralyzed her for so long, began to fade, replaced by the promise that they could reclaim their lives. In the midst of the battle against the shadows, Sarah glimpsed familiar faces in the light, neighbors, friends, and other loved ones, all watching with expressions of reassurance, mirroring their strength. James, now no longer twisted and cruel, offered a soft smile, signaling the barriers of fear that had once kept everyone apart were crumbling down. "Keep pushing forward." Sarah shouted over the chorus of fading darkness. Together, they shot forward into the center of the light like arrows released from a bowstring. The shadows screeched, but the warmth of the locket embraced them, anchoring their spirits. They felt momentum build, and with it, the walls that once confined them to fear began to disintegrate, revealing an entirely different world, their world, but peace-filled. "Is it really over, Mom?" Zoe's voice trembled slightly, but the weariness that clung to it was laced with a newfound determination. "It's just the beginning." As they emerged from the tumult, shimmering vibrancy enveloped them, lifting the last remaining burden from Sarah's shoulders. The sunlight poured in through the open back door, illuminating the kitchen and washing away the shadows that had filled it with anguish. "It's time to go home," she replied softly, holding Zoe's hand tightly. The two stepped over the threshold, leaving the remnants of darkness behind. In that moment, reckoning came, basking in the joy of survival and embracing the warmth of forgiveness, and somewhere in the distance, beneath the whisper of the trees, the darkness evaporated, leaving only silence where shadows once lurked. As they stepped outside, the world burst into color, the laughter of children echoed in the air, neighbors exchanged greetings, and the sweetness of normalcy filled the streets. "I love you, Mom," Zoe said, beaming up at her, her smile radiant. "I love you too, baby. More than anything." For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt truly alive. Then, as they walked hand in hand down the sidewalk, the memories of fear began to fade, dissolving into the sunshine. Though the shadows still lingered as distant memories, they would no longer haunt their hearts. They had faced their worst fears, united against the darkness that had threatened them. They had sent it running back to where it belonged and emerged stronger, together. So, tonight, as the sun began to dip beneath the horizon, Sarah took a deep breath, ready for whatever came next. Who knew? Maybe tomorrow, they could finally make that visit to the park again. A comforting thought washed over her: subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now, your support fuels the journey. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this wild ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.